Cynthia versus Steven. In this video we will go over what if Cynthia and Steven battled. I've always wondered what would happen if Pokemon trainers who haven't battled before actually battle. And obviously they can only battle against each other in the anime, but in this video we will go over as if they battled in the games. And we will of course have a bit from the anime as well. Like we know Cynthia and Steven has never battled. What will happen is that we will take Pokemons that they've used both from the anime and the games, and we will build a team for both of them that will be best against the other characters' Pokemon. We'll also only be using moves, abilities and items that they have used on that Pokemon. This obviously won't be a perfect reflection of a battle, but I've done my best to make it as realistic as possible. I will also be using a damage calculator for the battle. Cynthia has 12 Pokemon compared to Steven's 10 Pokemon, which means that Cynthia will have a bit of an advantage because she has more Pokemon to choose between, and Steven will have to prepare for more Pokemons. So let's get into building the teams. We're gonna start off with Cynthia's team. She is of course going to have her Garchomp. Obviously it is her ace and it is really good against Steven's Pokemon. Steven does have a big ground type weakness, which means that Garchomp's Earthquake will be fantastic, and also having the dragon type moves and some other coverage moves will be really good. The moveset that will give the Garchomp is Earthquake for obvious reasons, Flamethrower to have some coverage against steel types like Skarmory, and bug and grass types like Armaldo and Cradily. We will also have Dragon Claw since it's a pretty strong move and we want that dragon boost of course. And then as the final move is Crunch, which is there to just be used against any of his psychic types that he has, like Claydol and Metagross. Garchomp will also have Citrus Berry and Rough Skin. The next Pokemon is gonna be Spiritomb. It's gonna have Custap Berry and Pressure. Pressure is gonna be basically useless for this type of battle, but that's the only ability we could pick from. Spiritomb again here is gonna be good against any psychic type Pokemon, but also pretty good damage against any other one. It's not really weak to any of the typings except for Bug, so other than that it can just put up some Ghost and Dark damage. It also have Will-O-Wisp, which will be great if it's able to burn any physical attackers. And then the other moves are going to be Shadow Ball, Dark Pulse and Sucker Punch. In my opinion, another pretty obvious one is going to be Lucario. We're gonna have Mega Lucario here. We're not using Mega Garchomp because Mega Lucario is actually better for this. Steven's team is really weak to the fighting type as well, and the Lucario will have the ability Inner Focus, which won't really matter because it will get the Mega ability anyway, and it will just be destroying every Pokemon with close combat. We'll also have Bullet Punch, Shadow Ball and Aura Sphere on there as well. Since it has pretty good special attack as well, it's good to have some moves related to that. These three first were really obvious ones to me. The next three felt pretty obvious as well, but we have some other Pokemons that didn't make the cut. Like Roserade would have been a great Pokemon because it's a grass type and Steven is pretty weak to grass. Cynthia has a Kommo in the anime, and that would have been great. It would have been so useful, but the problem is that it only knows Outrage from what we know of, and that basically makes it useless. We also of course have a Glaceon, which could have been great as well, but I don't think Ice will be needed that much. Instead of Roserade, we will basically go with Gastrodon. Gastrodon is just way better in all of these ways. Having a Gastrodon with leftovers and then Storm Drain, that won't be that useful anyway. And then the moveset of Earth Power, Recover, Scald and Sludge Bomb. Sludge Bomb is there for the Cradily, which is the only Pokemon that Gastrodon will be weak to, and the rest of the Pokemon it can destroy quite easily, except for maybe the Skarmory. And Roserade wouldn't have been more useful anyway. Another member on the team will be Milotic, which also plays the role that Roserade and Glaceon could have played, but Milotic just does it better. It's gonna have Flame Orb with Marvel Scales, and the moves are gonna be Surf, Ice Beam, Iron Head and Recover. Now when I think about it, Iron Head will be kinda useless because of the Flame Orb, but it's just good coverage as well. But Ice Beam and Surf is enough, but it will have a bit of a struggle against Skarmory for example, and as well as Metagross, but it will do quite a lot of damage to the rest of them, since they're all pretty weak to Surf or Ice Beam. And the final Pokemon, this was the one that was really difficult to pick. I looked through Steven's Pokemon and I was thinking, what is the weakness that right now is pretty obvious on Cynthia's team, and there isn't really a clear weakness. But the thing is that Skarmory and Aerodactyl could play their parts really well in a battle against Cynthia and this team, which means I needed something to take out Flying type, because right now we have been focusing on the other Pokemons, while these two of course we have focused on a little bit, like surfing them, flamethrowing them will work, but the other Pokemon that Steven has could easily tank some of those attacks, which means that if we're not in a situation like that, we will need something for the Flying type. And I have not talked about the Flying type Archeops, but Archeops is pretty bad, and I feel like the other ones are way more of a threat. But Archeops is still, of course, a flying type that could still be a threat. And since Steven has 10 Pokemons and 3 of them are flying types, it's pretty important that you would have something to take care of them. Because you don't want to get into a situation where you're focusing on using Earthquake and 3 flying types in a row comes out. And Cynthia has an Electros. But the problem is, a big thing about Steven's team is that it uses Earthquake. But of course, Electros has Levitate, which means it's no problem. But still, that's not good enough, because having a Pokemon just focused on doing the flying types won't be good either. You want it to be able to do other stuff as well, which is why we have Porygon C, which is basically perfect for this team. It's gonna be using Expert Belt and Adaptability, which is great for it, especially with the moveset of Hyper Beam, Shadow Ball, Ice Beam, and Thunderbolt. It can basically battle any of the Pokemons and do quite a lot of damage. We have the Ice Beam to take out any Pokemon weak to that, as well as Thunderbolt to the flying types. And the Hyper Beam is just a good move for any Pokemon that doesn't resist the normal type. And Shadow Ball just to have some extra damage against anything that doesn't work with Ice Beam, Thunderbolt, or Hyper Beam. So I think this team is absolutely perfect for all of Steven's Pokemon. We have the close combats for the rock types like Aggron, Cradily, Armaldo, Excrudil, and then we have the Earthquakes for those as well as Metagross. We have the water attacks against Claydol, Archeops, and Aerodactyl, and even Armaldo in that case as well. We have Thunderbolt against the flying types, like I talked about, and we have even more stuff that will just work against all of Steven's Pokemon. The only one we haven't really talked about is Carbink. A Carbink isn't that strong, and it isn't that good. Using Surf or Earthquake on it will pretty much kill it. So we're pretty set here for the battle. But okay, what is Steven's team going to be? Of course, he's gonna have Metagross on the team. He's gonna have a Mega Metagross actually. The moves are gonna be Meteor Mash, Zen Headbutt, Bullet Punch, and Hammer Arm. The Hammer Arm is there specifically for the Lucario, since it's a pretty strong Pokemon that is weak to fighting. It's also there to have super effective moves against Porygon. I know I say Porygon, but I mean Porygon C, of course. And it's also strong against Glaceon, which means we have pretty good coverage here. And the other moves are just moves that will work against most Pokemons, with Stab on them, of course. Like, we gotta have Meteor Mash. It will destroy most Pokemons. And then a Pokemon we actually don't have on the team is gonna be Carbink, because Carbink is pretty weak. Even though it has the Fairy type, that can be really good against 2 dragons that she has. It still isn't gonna be fast or strong enough, in my opinion, to be useful enough. It will probably only get off 1 fairy attack and then be dead, which makes it kinda worthless. I also decided that Aggron isn't gonna be on the team, since it's super weak to ground and fighting type moves, which we are fighting quite a lot here. And that is why instead we're gonna have Skarmory. Skarmory can take the place of both of these Pokemon. Not completely, but a little bit. Skarmory will have no item and sturdy. It will also have Aerial Ace, Steel Wing, Toxic, and Protect. It clearly isn't the strongest, but it can still be used in a lot of the fights. It's obviously super effective against Roserade. Aerial Ace and Steel Wing can still work against plenty of the Pokemons. Like, it can do damage on Garchomp, it can do damage on Gastrodon, on Milotic, on Porygon, on Spiritomb, and then super effective against Glaceon as well, and a bit on Komodo. So it does quite well in this, and it just resists any earthquakes or any stuff like that, which will be fantastic for a battle like this. And then the third Pokemon is gonna be Aerodactyl. Aerodactyl is gonna have Pressure, which won't do anything here anyway, and it will have the item Focus Sash, which is pretty good. The moves are gonna be very Fang based, because we're gonna have Ice Fang, Fire Fang, Thunder Fang, and Rock Slide. These are actually the only moves it can use. The same was for Porygon C. We didn't really have any other options, but these are still okay. Thunder Fang is great for any of the water types, not Gastrodon, but still. Milotic. Rock Slide is great for anything weak to rock, like Glaceon, Togekiss, Braviary. And then we have Ice Fang, which is the most important one, because this will be used against Garchomp. We're keeping the Aerodactyl for it to fight against Garchomp, because Ice Fang is gonna do a lot against the Garchomp, and we need something super effective against Garchomp to take it down. And Aerodactyl is fast, faster than Garchomp, faster than most Pokemon, and it will for sure live at least 1 or 2 attacks, which makes it the perfect counter for Garchomp, since Garchomp can't even use Earthquake on it. So Aerodactyl will be the Garchomp killer. And then we have Cradily. Cradily is really important because we need the grass type. especially for Milotic and Gastrodon. It doesn't really do anything that much against other Pokemons except for just normal damage, and it will be having Expert Belt and the ability Suction Cups. The moves are gonna be Giga Drain, Seed Bomb, Earthquake, and Confuse Ray. Earthquake is of course there for the Lucario, and while the grass type moves there are for the water types, we can still use it against some of the other Pokemons. Confuse Ray is also gonna be great if we can confuse some of the Pokemons, or at least one of them, and Cradilla will probably be great here. Then we have Armaldo with White Herb and Battle Armor. It's gonna have the move Super Power because of White Herb of course, and then of course Asian Power, Excisor, and Rock Blast. And this guy is gonna be great against Spiritomb. Since Steven can still sort of guess what will be used against him, we will still be planning like he could guess that as well, because they're both smart and strong trainers. Armaldo is just great. It is good against Roserade, Spiritomb, Braviary, and Togekiss, and can do some normal damage to Porygon, Electros, and like any other Pokemon here. It can even do some stuff to Milotic, and maybe even against Garchomp. And then we have the final Pokemon. The final Pokemon has to be ground type, because we don't have a ground type so far. And there are two ground types that I can pick from, Excadrill and Claydol. The thing here is though, Excadrill is weak to ground, and we have already established that ground is a weakness that we have. And also, Psychic is good against fighting, which is also a weakness. Which means that Excadrill will basically be worthless while Claydol will be quite useful. So we will have Claydol with no items since it has never used an item, with the ability Levitate. And the moves are Earthquake, Extrasensory, Light Screen, and Reflect. Earthquake and Extrasensory will be perfect for this battle, and then Light Screen and Reflect could be useful as well. Getting any of these up will of course help against any of the damage that we can take. And Claydol would just be good with Earthquake and Extrasensory as well, since we have Pokemon weak to those moves. And the Levitate, like I said, will just be able to resist any of the ground type attacks and a great switch in. And that is Steven's team done for this. They both have two great teams for each other, but who will come out on top? Drop your guesses right now below in the comments who you think will win. And also, if you watched this far, feel free to like and subscribe, and join my Discord server and Twitch, which are both linked in the bio. But okay, let's start the battle. The battle will start by Steven sending out Cradily while Cynthia sends out Spiritomb. Cradily is the perfect start since it's a Pokemon that isn't super weak to any of the other Pokemons, as well as is there to take out two Pokemons that most of the team is pretty weak to, which means that there isn't that big of a risk of sending it out. And Spiritomb is of course out there since it really isn't weak to anything on Steven's team. But what actually happened is that Claydol will be using Confuse Ray, while Spiritomb will be switched out to Lucario, and Lucario will become confused, and then we'll see a Mega Evolution on Lucario instantly with a close combat on Cradily, but Cradily will switch to Claydol so Claydol can tank the close combat, which it does pretty well. And then we'll just do clashes between these two, since we had a switch in of close combat, and then they will be attacking, and the winner will be Claydol with 5 HP, because Lucario died because of confusion. This was 3 rounds since Earthquake almost one-shotted Lucario, but it then died to confusion. Claydol tanked 2 close combats. There is also a pretty high chance that the first Earthquake actually killed, but I made it so it didn't kill, so that the confusion could come into play, because close combat made Lucario lose some defense. And then Gastrodon will come out, but Gastrodon is actually slower than Claydol, so Claydol is able to set up Light Screen, and then Claydol dies to Scold from Gastrodon. And then Cradily comes back out to use Giga Drain twice, and Gastrodon stays in to use Scold to do a little bit of damage, but because Light Screen is up as well, it doesn't do like anything. And Cradily takes out Gastrodon with Giga Drain, and Gastrodon of course faints. And then Porygon C comes out. Cradily now has 90% HP, and they will go back and forth. Cradily will use Confuse Ray and Seed Bomb, and because Porygon C is faster, Cradily will die after 3 turns and only be able to use 2 attacks. And then Light Screen goes away. Porygon now has 65% HP, and Armaldo comes out. This is when Porygon C uses Hyper Beam. And Armaldo of course lives on 35 HP and then is able to kill Porygon C with Super Power. And that is when Milotic comes out. Milotic is faster and uses Surf and then just kills Armaldo, which means that the current standings are Milotic, Spiritomb, and Garchomp. On Steven's team we have Metagross, Aerodactyl, and Skarmory. So it's a very close fight right now. But this is when we see Metagross come out and we see Mega Evolution right there, and we have Mega Metagross against Milotic. Milotic will use Surf, which does quite a lot, but Mega Metagross is faster and kills with 2 Zen Headbutts. And this is when Spiritomb comes out, and Metagross uses Meteor Mash on Spiritomb while it uses Dark Pulse. Spiritomb then goes to 30% HP but is able to kill with a Sucker Punch, because Sucker Punch is of course faster if the other Pokemon uses an attack as well, which means that Metagross, the ace of Steven, is now dead. But Spiritomb and Garchomp are the only Pokemons left, and Spiritomb is really low on HP. Which means that we have 2 versus 2 while Spiritomb is almost dead. So what happened is that Skarmory comes out, Spiritomb will use Shadow Ball, and Skarmory does Aerial Ace. Aerial Ace does a bit over 20% of damage, which means that Spiritomb is almost dead. But because of the berry, Spiritomb becomes faster when it is at low HP, and is able to hit off another Shadow Ball, which almost kills the Skarmory. But then Skarmory ends up killing it with Aerial Ace anyway. Skarmory now has 10 HP left, and Garchomp comes in and is faster and kills with Flamethrower. And now there's only 2 Pokemon left, Garchomp versus Aerodactyl. None of them have Mega Evolution. This fight is really close. So what happens? Aerodactyl is faster, and the attacks that are gonna be used is Dragon Claw versus Ice Fang. And Ice Fang does 60% of damage, which makes it so that it can kill if it is faster 2 times. Dragon Claw does a bit less, but because Aerodactyl did contact with Garchomp, it takes a bit of damage, which makes it under 50%. Because of Rough Skin, of course. And now both are under 50%. And what we know, Aerodactyl is faster and can just kill here. But that's when Citrus Berry comes into play, and because Garchomp has less than half of its HP remaining, it will be eating the Citrus Berry, living another Ice Fang. So the winner is Cynthia, because Garchomp lives 2 Ice Fangs because of Citrus Berry, and then it ends up killing with a Dragon Claw, and because Aerodactyl took a bit of damage from Rough Skin. This was a really close battle, but actually if I made it so that Milotic came out instead of Gastrodon when Gastrodon came out, it would have not been this close, and Cynthia would have won a bit easier, because Cynthia would have had a much bigger advantage. But in this battle it was really close, and the winner was of course Cynthia, which I think we all could have actually guessed. But I think this was really accurate, and I hope you enjoyed this. Please tell me in the comments if you agree with this outcome. And also let me know what other characters you would want to see fight. So thank you for watching this video. And I have a video right here about Pokemons with 3-stage lines that could just be 2-stage lines. So go and watch that if you enjoy my content. But feel free to subscribe and like the video, follow my Twitch, and join my Discord server, link in bio. Other than that, I'll see you guys in the next one. Have a great rest of your night, day, morning, or whatever. Peace out, and don't forget to follow.